Kissinger was really the first sort of celebrity secretary of state.
State, absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, he
he
he he
was.
comes on the scene. There's pictures of him with the ladies. What was the famous actress he was with?
Well, there were a whole set of them, but Jill St. John is the one that comes to mind. And
Yeah,
Marlo
yeah, yeah.
Thomas was another, and I forget the other one, the Norwegian actress also that he squired around. I mean, yeah,
It's so funny this this German-born diplomat with this heavy accent is now this American icon.
well, there was for a time he was the most admired man in America 3 years in a row in the 70s, and then he sort of fell out of favor. But he was at the height of his popularity. He had an approval rating in 85 to 90%.
Did you ever get to speak to him when you were writing your book? Really? Okay, we gotta flesh this out. So did you only meet him once, or you got to?
I only met him once directly. It was a courtesy interview, I think, because he was working. He knew one of my academic mentors, and he gave me an opportunity to come by and talk to him, and we did. And then I met him at. He came to the State Department when I was serving on the historical advisory committee, and I got the opportunity to ask him a question then and interact with him a couple of times with the exchange of documents and the rest. But it was a minimal amount, but I did have at least the chance to meet him.
So what was your biggest takeaway from meeting him in person?
He's a very, very brilliant man. I mean, he was very, very smart and also very cagey. There was no, I should preface this by saying that I had done a previous book on an older diplomat, John McCloy, and McCloy was past the point where he really could engage. He was at that stage in his 80s where he was simply repeating stories, and you had a hard time really engaging him. Henry Kissinger never got to that point. Henry Kissinger was his brain never sort of showed that aging that you see in other people. He really his body may have faltered, but he remained incredibly quick and understanding of issues. So much so that, as you probably know, toward the end of his life, he was dwelling on the issue of artificial intelligence and its impact on international relations. I mean, that's an amazing thing when you think someone at that age is still that interested in modern developments.
That was what was at the forefront of my mind the entire time reading his book World Order. I mean, he basically sums up the history of geopolitics of every region of the world and all the complicated, nuanced interplays between nations, the United States' role in all of it. And I'm sitting there reading this and I'm like, I can only hope to become as smart as this, a fraction of as smart as this one day. I mean, just the amount of knowledge and understanding of diplomacy and foreign relations that he has. I could pick out at random a single sentence from that book, and it is just the most profound sentence that you could talk about for hours and flesh out. And every single sentence, it's like almost 400-page book. Every sentence is just the most brilliant, written, deep, nuanced thing. I'm like, he's brilliant, and I can only hope to become a fraction of as smart as this.
Well, I think you are part of a fan club of his that does exist. There are people, though, and I can tell you that really would reject all of that. Just say you know, he was awful, and everything else. So I recognize, and I probably am much closer to your view in terms of understanding him and seeing him as a really force for understanding American diplomacy and international politics. But he remains, as you pointed out at the beginning, controversial figure.
Yeah, I try not to be too naive because I'm such a nerd and fan about history. I have such a deep appreciation for the people who came before me that it's hard not to put them on a pedestal. So I often have to remind myself that these are people, and they're very nuanced lives. They have failures and successes, and it's important to study that because no one's perfect. It's something that I have to remind myself of often.
It is actually, I do think one of the occupational hazards of being a historian is that we do tend sometimes to glorify the past and think people that were smarter, wiser, whatever than our current people, and that is something that you have to fight against and remember that they were human and they had their own faults as well.
So what did you when you met Kissinger, what are some of the things that you asked him?
Well, I began the interview probably in the wrong way, and then I started talking about his early life, and I don't think he wanted to talk about that. It's not a topic. He did share more of that with his biographer, Neil Ferguson, but I don't think he wanted to talk about those issues. And I had been doing research on that. So he was not very happy with some of those questions. It was easier when we got into the geopolitical questions, but mostly he told me things that I'd already read in his memoirs. It wasn't, I didn't get any surprise revelations or anything like that. The funny part of the interview was when we got to the question of soccer. We ended up, it was shortly before the World Cup, and so we were talking about a little bit about soccer. I had become interested in soccer from my children, and so we ended up talking about soccer. And he loved talking about soccer. That's one of his unknown contributions, is the degree to which he was involved in bringing soccer to the United States.
I can't, I would have been so starstruck.
Well, I was nervous. I will tell you that. I wouldn't say, but after a little while, you get past that. But he was, he was. It certainly was nervous before meeting.
Wow. I mean, he's such a larger than life figure. It's crazy. And I did he ever, like, oh, good, like you ask questions like, oh, that's a great question.
No,
'Cause
that was not his style.
yeah,
No.
yeah. To me, that when someone says that, that's like the most rewarding thing to me because
I know. He was not going to do that, though. Although he did toward the end of the interview. I think, especially when we actually talked about soccer, he did sort of warm up a little bit and was less confrontational. He did not particularly care for one of my academic advisors, who he thought had been critical of him. And I did have the chance recently, Jake, to meet his son, David, who looks like him except has a beard. And it was very interesting to meet him and to hear that he had read my book and sort of thought it was. He didn't like some of the criticisms. He's a big fan of his father, needless to say, but he thought it was at least fair compared to some of the more nasty
that's got to be a
books about his
difficult
father.
life to be the
To
son
be
of
the
Henry
son of Henry
Kissinger.
Kissinger,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think David Kissinger did very well. He told some very interesting anecdotes about being Kissinger's son, and it was absolutely fascinating to meet him.
Yeah, but I mean, to live in any larger than life figure's shadow like that, but also someone as controversial as Henry Kissinger, I'm sure he gets plenty of hate mail and threats and disrespect because I mean, the Lincoln family, I was talking with a historian about Mary Lincoln and Robert Todd Lincoln, who's his son, and we were talking about the Lincoln family and his descendants and everything. And Lincoln's grandkids, I believe it was his grandkids or his great grandkids, anyway. But there was 3 or 4 of them, and none of them had kids because they all hated being Lincoln's grandchildren. They absolutely despised it, and they made it an absolute point to never have kids, because they didn't want them to go through the same. I think some of them even infertilized themselves to make sure that they never had kids. So I mean, living through something like that where you're living in the shadow of a great man, I think it can make or break you.
Yeah, well, I don't think I think in the case of David Kissinger, he's very well adjusted. He went in a different direction than his father. He was a producer, a television producer, went to Hollywood, all of these things, and he had children. So I think it's yeah, no, and I think Henry Kissinger in many respects was a very good father. So
That's awesome. I'm glad he made it through his childhood okay.